That's me right there at AKAI headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. Came to pick up an MPC4000 from this guy, Nakamura-san, the head of tech at AKAI Professional. The year, 2002. But let's go back to where it all started for AKAI. That's around 1946, when Masakichi AKAI and Saburo AKAI, his son, formed the AKAI Electric Company to sell consumer electronic goods. Transistor radios, turntables, receivers, microphones. In fact, AKAI kept growing and got so big, it became the third largest seller of electronic consumer goods in America. Between 1946 and 1980, there are two reasons why AKAI grew so big. One is the technology, from the 78 RPM record to the 33 LP to the short form 45 RPM record. Then, in the late 60s, we have the birth of the cassette and the cassette player for commercial music. And again, in the early 80s, we get the CD. These are all different forms, but doing the same thing. Audio in, audio out. And the second change that helped AKAI was the acceptance of black rock and roll. Between 1946 and 1954, black music exploded around the world. Before that time, most countries had their own pop music. But black music was so different, it changed the vibe of what they were listening to. It became a huge pop music market and exploded around the world all over in every country it touched. And these kids were listening to it, they wanted to play music like it, they wanted to have their own pop sound. And AKAI knew it. It was helping them to grow their business. And the next step they knew they had to do was to start a brand new company, AKAI Professional, for electronic musical devices. In 1984, they launched AKAI Professional. They introduced 3 keyboards. One is the AX60, then there's the AX80, and then the AX73. These are all similar to Roland's Juno series, except they're using voltage control for oscillation when Roland is using digital control. They introduced the MG1212, which is a 12-track recording system. It records to a VHS-type tape. It can do 10 minutes or 20 minutes of recording. But the big deal is that they have SMPTE timecode now, and they have MIDI timecode as well for locking and syncing up with other devices. Then their sampler, the S612. It wasn't bad. I got it from my studios. We liked it and we used it, but we wanted more. In 1986, they launched the S900. This was the perfect sampler. It was perfect. The architecture was perfect. The structure was good. I could take 7.5 kilohertz or 40 kilohertz samples. I controlled my sample rate. It worked with MIDI. MIDI in, MIDI out. 1 through 16. There were no problems anywhere. I could store it to a floppy disk. This is the perfect step before the MPC60. This becomes the big hit. It sells through their distribution system in every country. Major studios all have one. It's perfect. But this is not it. It's close. But they need a drum machine, and they know it. But they can't do it. They ain't got the scooters. We gotta leave Tokyo, Japan. It's time to go back to America. We're heading to California, 1979. We gotta meet the guitar player, Roger Linn. It's 1979. Roger Linn has an idea. He believes there needs to be a drum machine with real drum samples inside of it. He starts a company, Linn Electronics. He comes out with his first machine in 1980, the LM1. It's got drum sounds in it. They can all be tuned perfectly. They're in some of the big studios. It's a pretty cool machine. They want to try it out. Prince gets a hold of it, starts using it. Gary Newman gets a hold of it. He starts using it. Michael Jackson gets a hold of it. He starts using it. The LM1 is a success for Roger Linn. It's 1982. Roger Linn releases the new Linn Drum machine, the successor to the LM1. It's got high quality samples, flexibility, and affordability. It's popular. It sells like hotcakes. It outsells the LM1. It's 1984. Everybody's trying to copycat the Linn Drum. Roger Linn comes out with the Linn 9000. It looks good. The pads are smoking. They're soft, they're sensitive, they're perfect rubber pads. People start to buy it. There's a problem. Chronic software bugs. Not reliable at all in the studio. Cable heats up. There are problems with it. It's not working so great. Okay, it's a flop, essentially. 1985, he comes out with the Linn Sequencer. It's a 32-track rack mount hardware device, a MIDI sequencer. It has the same operating system. This is going to flop. He should really know this at this point. January 1986. Roger Linn introduces the Linn Drum MIDI Studio at the Winter NAMM show. No one orders it. It's a total flop out the box. The next following month, in February 1986, Linn Electronics went out of business. Now we go back to Tokyo, Japan. AKAI sees what's going on. They know Roger Linn can do the job they need to have done. They know he's got time on his hands. He knows he can probably work the deal. They get together and they start building one of the best drum machines ever made. They spend months working on this device. They come out with a device called the ADR-15 in 1987. Only problem is, you can see there's no flip screen. You can't flip the screen up and see what you're working on. Well, they had to fix that. But once they did, it came out again in 1988 as the MPC60. A really awesome machine. This machine is so good that today, 34 years later, people are still buying it. They don't even manufacture it anymore. You got to find one used. That is an amazing thing, to have one device that's not even manufactured anymore, but still in demand. The price of the brand new MPC60 in 1988 was $5,000. MPC60 is an amazing device. When it came out in 1988, I ended up getting one a couple of years later, but it was a really good, I couldn't afford the $5,000, get the hell out of here. But I got it for a really good price because someone's selling it, of course, and I got it used. And everybody else gets it used now. So I feel good I got it used, and I sold it used for more than what I paid for it, which is a great deal. And a lot of people love this device. It's not just the sampler section. It's not just a drum machine. It's a MIDI production center. You can put cables in, any 4 cables to send MIDI out, 2 MIDI cables in. You can record MIDI tracks. You can send to keyboards, send to these other keyboards, another drum machine. You can send MIDI everywhere. It can control everything and be a master clock as well. It's got SMPTE, it's got MTC. It's a great machine. And I can store stuff down to a hard drive. You can't go wrong. And it didn't go wrong. It was all over the world. Everybody loved this machine. Every studio had it. And it made AKAI a really big company. Now, this is the first in our series. The next one coming out, which will be out probably this Friday, is the MPC62. We'll talk about that and how they went through a lot of problems to try and fix it. But really, they just went through ways to update the MPC62, and they changed it a little bit because, what can I tell you? Metal's expensive, plastic's cheaper, and hard plastic seems to work these days, and back then too when the MPC62 came out. Now we'll have every MPC in this series, and there's a lot to actually happen with AKAI. We're going to talk about the 3 guys that destroyed AKAI. Essentially, they destroyed AKAI totally. We'll talk about their battle with Roland, and we'll talk about how AKAI changed when an American company took it over, and it became AKAI Professional inside of In Music Brands. Any questions? I want you to hit me up down the bottom, leave me a comment, Tell me if you liked the video or not, and we'll try to improve it also as well as we get better with making a documentary about the MPCs. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.